join us on the program shortly, and we'll get to find out whether or not your 2K will be affected. Let's go on a short break. When we return, Dr. Emmanual Idenyi, who is an economic analyst, will be joining on the program to give some perspective to, these matters that has developed between, Unity Bank and Providus Bank. So do stay. And you're still watching Business Daily, coming to you live on Trust TV. Just before the break, we did take a look at, social media opinions on the recent merger between Unity Bank and Providus Bank. And one of those is the recent development by the Central Bank of Nigeria having granted the approval for financial accommodation to the tune of 700 billion naira. But I'm joined now by an expert who will help us, explain, this development even better. I'm joined by Dr. Emmanual Idenyi. Thank you, Doctor, for coming on the program today.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to always be with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Doctor, let us begin with, the context and the justification for not just the merger now, but the financial accommodation that we have seen from the CBN. This came as a shock to most economic watchers, especially considering the fact that we had just seen, what played out with Heritage Bank. But looking specifically at this particular development now, what would you say is the primary reason behind the CBN's decision to intervene in the merger between these two banks?
Thank you very much. First of all, we must understand the role of the central bank as the banker to the banks and banker to the federal government. That's number one. Number two, we must also realize that the CBN, as enabled by the Bank and Other Financial Institutions Act, both here, amended 2020, can either advise for a merger or an acquisition or a total liquidation like we saw with the Heritage Bank situation. So, many people who may not be aware of what Unity Bank is, used to be a merger of 9 banks then before the capitalization of 2005 by Professor Charles Soludo, and they recapitalized and merged to become a Unity Bank, Bank of the North, Intercity Bank, First Interstate, and many other banks that made up the Unity. And why was it named Unity? Bank of the North was basically funded by the 1900 states. And even after that merger, they were not still very strong. That is the point. And because CBN, as statutorily provided, will not allow depositors to lose their funds in any bank, has kept on looking at the performance of Unity Bank year in, year out. And do not forget, Unity Bank from Bank of North has a northern bias. That's the truth. A northern Nigerian bias. And there is no bank that has its origin from the northern side of Nigeria that's currently existing apart from Unity Bank. So we must understand where the quagmire for Unity Bank is. And permit me to say, and let me leave it on the table here, that the 19 northern states government mismanaged Unity Bank. Mismanaged Bank of the North to the point that they no longer fund it, and a lot of them had, non-performing loans that are not serviced with the Unity Bank. And for the central bank, they cannot just stand by. Central bank will not wake up to liquidate another bank. Central bank will use every other means, mergers, acquisition, and even discuss with other viable commercial banks, and if they are willing, I can tell you there were options on the table before the central bank eventually acceded to the decision of the merger between Unity Bank and Providus Bank, because depositors would not lose their funds. Those that may lose their funds may be shareholders, because the performance of these two institutions may not be the same, or are even not the same on the floor of the exchange. In fact, they are not even on, because Providus Bank Limited just came into existence in 2016, June. So that being said, the political economics that plays in the financial system stability came to play here. So the next question somebody will want to ask is, Why didn't they intervene the same way they're intervening now for a heritage bank? That's the question. But the truth of the matter is, the situations may not be exactly the same, and the politics are not the same.
So, Doctor,
So,
I'd like for you to, tell us what factors could have influenced, the different approaches by the Central Bank of Nigeria. And I'll just point out that all that Doctor is saying are completely his opinions and not the opinion of Trust Television. So go on with your thoughts, Doctor.
So, number one, Unity Bank has a lot of branches that physical branches, over 200 branches, some in rural areas that Providus Bank does not have. Providus Bank started banking services June 2016. So, licensed by Central Bank, they are still penetrating to get branches in every location in Nigeria. So, before the Central Bank came up with this, they had taken a critical look at the books of Unity Bank, their financials, their non-performing loan, their shareholders fund, their debt to GDP, debt to loan ratio. All those things have been looked at, because they cannot, CBN will not just wake up and just that. These are the indices they have looked at. And again, if they advance them a loan like that we've done at 700 billion naira to be paid by a specific period of time, over time, don't forget they have a large chunk of customer base. Now, that is what the Central Bank is looking at. And in this case, Providus Bank felt they could take it up, and it's being said as a merger. Now, you may look at it as a merger, but it is more like a takeover, because Unity Bank has the physical structure of branches Providus Bank does not have. So it therefore means that this merger will produce a combined name or a new name entirely as approved by the Central Bank, so that depositors, number one, will not lose their deposits. Shareholders who, for one reason or the other, will lose in volume their shareholding, because they are the real managers of the Unity Bank. And of course, they approve most of the activities of the bank that the management of the bank goes to implement.
But I would like for us to talk about, the financial terms and structure. You've spoken about the 700 billion intervention by the Central Bank of Nigeria and the 20-year term loan with specific interest and repayment terms. Can you elaborate on all of this, especially in layman terms, for the benefit of our viewers?
The Nigerian economy has even made the layman an economist by default, because these are things that are in the public domain, and if you follow them over a period of time, you'll be able to, understand the financial language. The truth of the matter is, CBN giving that line of 700 billion do not also want to put them under pressure to pay back. Do not forget that every commercial bank borrows money from the Central Bank. They do borrow. As at the end of December, banks borrowed over 1.3 trillion from the Central Bank. It's normal, because they want to ensure that the liquidity level does not drop. So if you are going to save a Unity Bank through a merger with Providus Bank, and you are giving them a line, which the Central Bank has done, it's also incumbent on the Central Bank not to put them under pressure to pay that money back, while ensuring stability in the system, because they are very careful not to also send wrong signals even to foreign direct investment that might come in by this arrangement. So, and that's why the regulatory provisions are there, and it is clearly stated in that letter. And for CBN to communicate that letter out, it means the management of Providus Bank and that of Unity Bank must have come to terms with it before that pronouncement is made, and they must have checked that, given this and these indices, they will be able to meet those obligations, because like the CBN said, it's borrow. They are giving them, every bank borrow money from the Central Bank. It's a normal thing. But this, because of the way it has come, will ensure that they are put under strict monitoring, and their regulatory checks are more frequent, so that they do not allow the 700 billion to go back, because ordinarily a Unity Bank as it is today should have been gone long ago.
Okay, Doctor. I will also like for us to talk about, the implications of this. Should we expect, more bailouts in the short term? Because it's no news that banks have, been struggling recently, especially due to the recapitalization introduction by the Central Bank of Nigeria. So is this something that we should, be looking forward to, talking about more bailouts for more commercial banks in the nearest future?
Now, if you are watching, you will discover that some banks are already in the market selling shares, either IPO or right issue, just to meet that target set by the central bank in 2 years' time, based on the categorization, either tier 1, tier 2, or tier 3. The truth of the matter is CBN is watching closely and critical. CBN has all the records of the bank on their fingertips, and they know the bank that will require an assistance either through loan or a bailout, through mergers or acquisition. The truth of the matter is nobody will want to preempt the central bank, because the central bank is the only body that is empowered by law to pronounce a bank either healthy or not healthy. So we will not preempt the central bank, but we are sure they will do their job. And this under the management of the current management of the central bank in less than a year. See what they have done. It means that this is a process. I can tell you this process must have been on even before Cardoso came on board. And after carefully looking at the processes and the things that have been done, this is what they have come up. There is no merger that takes place that you only have one party on the table. You have multiples until two parties are favorable with the conditions before it will happen. Now, what this means is Providus Bank, as it currently is today, will now spread to other states in Nigeria, leveraging on the physical structures of a Unity Bank. Don't forget, Unity Bank has a lot of non-performing loans that has eaten up into their shareholders' funds. Providus Bank is willing to take that up, meaning that no customer of Unity Bank or no customer of Providus Bank will lose its deposit as it's current today in the bank. And that is what CBN is always looking at, so that it will not send a wrong signal out there. Liquidation is an option. Merger is an option. Acquisition is an option. Takeover is even an option. These are all the options on the table. So the central bank would have looked at it and carefully said, okay, merger with Providus Bank is the best option given the circumstance, and that's why it came out and pronounced it.
Well, I'm glad you emphasized that depositors' monies are safe, because while we were going through, social media comments, most Nigerians were asking, I hope my money is safe. Well, question answered, I believe. But Doctor, still on the regulatory and market implications, as we speak, Unity Bank is publicly listed on the NGX. So how will this merger affect, Unity Bank as a publicly listed company? Are there going to be, what should we expect going forward regarding that?
Now, Unity Bank is publicly listed, Providus Bank is not. Right? Now, there will now be a back-end arrangement that will be going on. Nobody will willingly get up now to buy shares of Unity Bank. That's the truth. I will not buy. Neither will I advise anybody to buy. But I will advise we midwife this process till the end, because usually when mergers of this nature happen, you expect a more vibrant financial institution to happen. We've seen previous mergers and we've seen the financial institutions that have come out of it. But the question you would ask is, Unity Bank as it is today was a merger of 9 banks. So what happened under the previous management of the central bank? What measures should have been taken for them to have been better and not to have now come and merge again? Now, it therefore means that there are some internal squabbles that happens in the bank. And even their shares being quoted on NGS is not as attractive as it used to be. Meaning that even the shareholders, even the management of the bank had a role to play to seeing the bank to where it is now, that is going into a merger. I can tell you, the sole aim of the central bank is to save depositors' funds, not even for the shareholders for their holdings to remain, because they are the ones that mismanage the bank, particularly because of the exposure to political office holders and politically exposed persons by virtue of the kind of loans they give them that are not recovered, and it affects the books of the bank. And that is why they are where they are. And merger is the way that CBN has thought it was, that it should save the Unity Bank.
Doctor, you have emphasized about the level of non-performing loans that the Unity Bank, currently has. And that goes to show, the significant existing obligations that are expected from Unity Bank going forward. So let us talk to how, this repayment or the repayment of the loan will affect, the financial health of the new entity. Should we, or what do you expect, should we foresee a stronger merger? Or are there chances that the current challenges will be translated to the new merger? What would you say from a financial point of view?
First of all, there will be what we call a culture shock, because a Unity Bank is not as a new generation bank like a Providus Bank. So that culture parity is there. They have to accept the reality that they are being saved. That's the truth. So whatever measures, all these must have been discussed before CBN is making a pronouncement. And some changes that are drastic will have to happen. In fact, some things will have to be jettisoned practically before they agree to get to this merger. So for those who may be on the side of Unity Bank, they must understand that this is not a personal attack on anybody, but to save the bank, which they happen to be employees. And for those who are in Providus Bank that are coming over, they must understand that they are stepping into a big shoe in terms of capacity to absorb what Unity Bank has absorbed, save the central bank that has been helping to manage the process, and until now they can no longer manage that to come public. So we must understand that measures will be taken to ensure that best practices in financial management of the banking services are what we play. Because if that had been done for Unity Bank, they would have gotten here. And that's the truth. So they must accept that those things will come on board to shape them to be the bank. They will not sack all the staff. That's the truth. Where does Providus Bank want to wake up to employ staff across board? They do not have. It is still this same staff of Unity Bank. You will use to midwife the process to the bank they desire or they wish to see. So those are the things that we should expect. Now, they should not also expect that people should not also jump to the bank to start pulling out their funds. Of course, those panic withdrawals will be there, but that will not solve the problem. The bank, as it is today, with the support of the central bank, wants to remain very strong, and that's why this option is on the table and it has been pronounced.
While we went through, social media comments, most Nigerians seem to applaud, the actions of the Central Bank of Nigeria. So I would like for us to talk regarding, the public perception and the confidence in the Nigerian banking system. What would you say? You've talked about, panic withdrawals. Is that common or particular to this particular measure? Is this something that happens usually when, cases like this come up? So what should we expect in terms of, public perception and confidence in the Nigerian banking system?
You cannot determine how somebody perceives something. Like I usually say, I have been in a commercial bank that took over banks, and I have been in a commercial bank that was taken over. So I have been on both divides. So the perception is that we are doing well, we're only merging. But that is the best you can do. But the public that have valid information will ask very critical questions. Some people have deposits that are seated in either of the banks, and they will tell you, I'd rather pull out my money first. When you are okay, I bring it back. And you can't deny them their withdrawal. You may make available all the professional and real and truthful explanation, but their perception is their perception. But what the central bank wants to do is that public perception that you are not losing your deposit. You will not go to the bank and you cannot withdraw your money. That's what it's particularly because it's a Unity Bank and it's a northern bank by default from the onset. Because that is the perception that it is our bank. But it is our bank, but you didn't manage it well. So this for me is a soft landing for a Unity Bank. Is a soft landing for a Unity Bank, for a Providus to even agree to absorb all the non-performing loans, the deficits in their positions, save the physical structures which they have, which is a plus that they are going to have, and to begin to expand the banking services.
Unity Bank had forecast, a profit of about 5.8 billion naira for the third quarter of 2024. Is that still feasible from your own point of view?
No, it's not feasible. You cannot build something on nothing. Their forecast was done based on their own standing alone. And if you check the financials of most banks, you will understand those forecasts are based on what we have done last year. We should be able to do same or even more by the same time. So that forecast does not hold water anymore, because a lot of things will change the dynamics completely from the day the CBN pronounces it. It doesn't hold water anymore.
We just got a question now from one of our viewers asking what will happen to bankers in both of these banks, even though you've answered that already. But it seems Nigerians are very interested, in what happens to their monies. So, Doctor, can you kindly explain that again?
What we should also know that the central bank is not also willing to let staffs of the bank to lose their job. That is pouring people into the labor market. Those are part of the decisions that are put on the table. Some people will be let go, no doubt about it, because there are some very old staff of Bank of the North who are still in Unity Bank that, sincerely speaking, they do not match up with the reality of the current banking system. They will be told to go. But of course, there's what we call ex gratia. There will be a system where they will be compensated while they exit the system. That ex gratia is part of the discussion, because some people will have to go. And permit me to say, some people will have to be employed into the new system, because Providus Bank do not have the entire capacity in terms of workforce to manage it. So they may need to poach people from other banks to bring their wherewithal to grow the bank. And some people in this bank have to go, but there must be an arrangement to pay them off some gratuity to create a soft landing for them, because their existence in the bank does not add value to bottom line, so they have to go. But your money is safe. Staffs will lose their job, but not in the immediate. That's the truth.
Okay, let's talk to the broader economic implications of this, looking at the entire banking system as we speak. So what would be the broader impact on not just these banks now, talking about Unity and Providus Banks, but the entire banking system after such a huge and significant financial bailout from the Central Bank of Nigeria? What should we expect going forward?
Other banks should be on their toes, because CBN is coming for you. That's the truth. CBN will not sit by and watch you mismanage or doctor your financials to create a positive and public position to think that you are doing well. CBN is actually watching, because the banking system in Nigeria is one of the most regulated in the financial system. And if anything happens to it, it affects every other. So that's why there is a deputy governor of central bank for financial system stability, specifically, just because it is important and that important. So other banks should sit on their toes and ensure that they do the right thing. If you are up there already selling shares to meet up the capitalization, please do it. If you are already doing right issues, please ensure you meet your target, because the CBN have given 2 years, is already counting. And to the public, ensure that you even ask the right questions, even from people who are not in that particular bank, so that it doesn't look as if the bank is not giving the right information. Because the CBN will not sit by, like I will always say, and watch a bank go down. It will be a failure on their part, and that's why they have risen to the occasion as the need arises to either liquidate or merge or acquire or take over, as the case may be. And this is the situation we find ourselves. Within 2 months, 3 months, we are seeing what's happening within the financial system. So the confidence is there, but it's shaky for a lot of people. But if you understand what's going on, you will know that your money in the commercial bank will not get lost. Let's just put it as it is. It cannot get lost. Never.
Doctor, you have spoken to how the Central Bank of Nigeria is the banker's bank, and in your words, the CBN will not sit down and watch a bank go down. So I would like for you to elaborate on the potential risk that could have come out or has been averted by the CBN by getting involved in this merger.
You will just wake up and discover that Unity Bank cannot meet their obligations anymore. A liquidation would have been what would be the next thing, like Heritage. And once there's a liquidation, you know what the NDIC regulation says, 5 million below. And if you have more than that, it is after there is a total sale of the asset, then you get liquidation dividend, which may not be up to what you had. So that is what CBN has averted by doing this, because it will also send a wrong signal to the public that within 3 months, CBN liquidated 2 banks and they liquidated the Unity Bank, knowing fully well that Unity Bank is most considered from the northern extraction. But this is a soft landing, and this soft landing by the central bank should not be taken for granted, because they may not repeat it. And that's the truth. It's a one-off thing. They may not repeat it, so that other banks will sit up and begin to go after their debtors to begin to recover their non-performing loans or debts that are doubtful.
Before we go, Doctor, you have emphasized on, the level of non-performing loans that the Unity Bank had, accrued in the space of time. But now, a clean slate, starting a new merger. So what would be your recommendations or your advice to, managers of these newly merged bank going forward to ensure that this bank indeed stands the test of time in the long term?
For me, I hope that Providus Bank is not biting more than they can chew, and I hope they have done their due diligence before they accepted to go into merger with the Unity Bank. And part of that due diligence is to ensure that they still go after those non-performing loans, whether they be individuals or corporate, so that as they are recovered, it will boost the net asset of the bank. It will boost it. Those loans should not just be left. They should follow those debtors, whether they are corporate or individual. And if they have assets, they should crystallize the assets and get the funds back into the system. It will only help them to have liquidity to also service the 700 billion that's been given to them by the central bank. And that is part of the responsibility they should be aware of. And it's a wake-up call to even anybody that is in any part of Providus or Unity Bank, that this is what they should do to make sure the bank stands, because it's a tough thing to go into merger, particularly when you are coming into a merger that you have an advantage more than the other person who is disadvantaged in terms of the financial position.
But what is the role and responsibility of AMCON in all of this regarding the non-performing loans?
AMCON originally was set up to last for 10 years. But of course, we know with the toxic assets, so AMCON is supposed to take over toxic assets of the bank. That's what AMCON should do. But that consideration was maybe soft pedal, because we want to see if it is possible for this merger to make them, get into a positive position before you say AMCON come and take over. Because once AMCON take over your assets, it means they are no longer your assets. But we want to see, I'm sure there are timelines for implementation of rules having Providus Bank and Unity Bank come on board, and those timelines will be monitored to see if they will achieve the purpose, particularly to get them into a credit position that should be, particularly with the way the economy is right now and the inflation rate, the exchange rates and everything. They have considered all that very, very well to see that whatever steps we take will ensure that in the 6 months, in 9 months, in 12 months, in 15 months, we'll bounce back to a positive position.
Well explained. I have been speaking with Dr. Emmanuel Idenyi, who is an economic analyst, and he has been speaking to the recent merger between Unity and Providus Bank. Thank you, Doctor, for shedding light and explaining the entire procedure for us. Deeply appreciated.
It's a pleasure to always be here. Thank you.
And And this is where we say our goodbyes on today's edition of the program. But you can, keep the conversation going on social media and let us hear from you. Drop your questions and your comment, and we will be there to, respond to these questions. My name is Chiamaka Enendu. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.